John, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hey, John.
Hey. All
right. So we are. Adiz is going to be late. Renee might be. She's going to be late if she comes at all. She had work tonight.
Okay.
So we'll get started without her for sure, and then without Adiz, and he'll join us when he can. And Jorge texted me saying that he has to borrow his girlfriend's laptop last time, and he's not able to do so tonight. So he's going to try and get on his phone. So I'm texting him right now just to see.
Okay. Are you sharing your screen? I'm just trying to make sure I can see it.
Yes, it should say creating effective activities.
All right, give me 1 second. Okay. Need your permission in order to start. Continue. Let's do this one. Oh, here we go. Okay, I can see it now.
Okay. Even when you're speaking, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. It kind of bounces back and forth for me, like when you're speaking, it kind of bounces away and then it comes back, like as if I was going to look at your, look at you.
Yeah.
But that's not a big deal for me. I just texted Jorge. I'll see what he says. And he's probably, I would guess that he's trying. If he doesn't get back to me, we'll get started here in a minute.
Okay.
How'd your session go tonight? Good.
Yeah, it went well.
Okay, good.
We're just working on We're working on possession with more of an emphasis on movement off the ball. Is kind of the coaching point.
Sure. And that's tough to coach.
Yeah, they're getting the hang of it. It's just good to see. It's kind of funny every once in a while you see them move and they're moving in the wrong direction, but they're moving, so we're getting there.
All right, Jorge's on. Jorge, I want to try and see if I can make you. All right, I got your text. You said you can hear everyone. Is there? I don't know what it looks like on your mobile device, Jorge. If there's a way to if there's a way for you to try and request to be a speaker again, like we've done before, do it. If not, there'll be some interactive stuff today. Just I don't know if you can type in the chat or text me or whatever. I realize it'll be a little delayed, but just the best you can. Do that. Okay, so Jorge, as I was telling John before you got in here, Renee may be joining us late. She had work until about now. Adiz is going to be late as well. So we're just going to get started between us. Okay, so today we're talking about creating effective activities. And again, know what goes into doing that. I've just actually now realizing I forgot to do the timing of my bullet point stuff in here, but that's okay. Okay, so what makes an activity effective? That question I'm going to pose to you guys. John, you got any thoughts on that?
Makes it it forces or emphasizes the skill or whatever you're working on. So just having the activity kind of force the players or help them. I think you know what I'm saying, but like the activity is designed around what you're trying to coach to versus, maybe the players could get away with not doing what you're asking of them.
Okay. Good. Definitely. By the way, Jorge, whenever I ask a question, go ahead and put it in the chat or the text, and I'll see it. Okay, so what I put is 3 things. 1, it results in the desired goal and objective being reached. So that's like what you're saying, John, right? Like what you're trying to get in your session is actually happening. But even more is that it translates to the game. So if you're doing effective activities in the game on the weekend, you should be able to start to see the objectives being transferred into that environment. And then beyond that, in the activities themselves, the players are enjoying them, they're being engaged, and they're being challenged. And then thirdly, it allows the coach to the coach to give appropriate feedback, which means coaching. Okay. Sorry, I'm responding to Jorge's text. Okay, so going on. So where do we start? Start with the big picture. So this is kind of the same thing we talked about last time. So starting with, we talked about seasonal development plans, starting with the big picture. So now with an activity, what does, you got something you want to work on, try to think, okay, what does that actually look like in the game? So if you're working on, so John, today you said you were working on with your team movement off the ball. So try to picture, what do those types of movements look like? What's the situation in the game that that creates the situation that you want them to do a specific movement, and then try to recreate that. How do we break that picture down? So what's the look like in the game? Now, how can we replicate that in a game, and or in a practice, and if just throwing out, obviously we could just recreate the game, but obviously we want to try and break that down. So how can we break that down piece by piece and then present that from the beginning to the end of the session? Okay, so talking about characteristics of an effective activity. I just gave you the first one, not intentionally, but that's okay. There's a few more. What are other, so that will give you a good hint in terms of what maybe I'm looking for here. So what are some of the characteristics of an effective activity?
Okay, so players are active.
Mm-hmm.
Effective activity. Everyone is involved, right? So maybe no one's being left out.
Good.
I would think a lot of like ball touching, right? Or everyone's, I guess that's the same thing, right? But everyone's getting touches.
Yeah.
It's challenge, right? It's challenging, but not so challenging that they can't grasp the concept, so they can effectively practice the skill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. No,
Let's go with those.
those are good answers. So, this is what you just talked about, right? Ball to player ratio. Do you have an appropriate ball to player ratio? So that could be, maybe in the warm up it's a lower, 1-to-1, like every player has a ball or every two players has a ball, depending on, so everyone get lots of repetition. As you move on, it slowly increases depending on your topic. Your work to rest ratio. So obviously we want them active, and like you said, we want everyone to get those opportunities, but also making sure that we're not just going 1v1 nonstop for 20 minutes, because obviously they can't do that. So can we create it so that there's a work to rest ratio that they can actually last? There's transition, some sort of transitional element. So or can be translated depending on what type of activity you're doing. I just said like an immediate reaction to a change in circumstance. So when I wrote that, I was thinking, if you're working with real little kids, like 7-year-olds, maybe you're doing a tag game. So you might think, okay, there's not tradition, but there is. So you just got tagged, now all of a sudden you have to become a tagger, or something like that. But the same goes. So we try to have activities that have this element. So if you're doing a keep away game and the defender steals it, what do they do now? Try and score, as opposed to just now it's over. Okay, they win it. Now you stop playing and restart. The slanty line. You heard of that before?
Yeah. Right. Is that kind of like finding the balance of the difficult or of the challenging
Yes.
part of it?
Yes. So that's like making it so if you imagine a limbo stick, right, and it's instead of it being straight across, it's a slant, and that way anyone can go under the part that's the proper challenge for them, right? Some people can dip really low, other people not as much. That's where the term slanty line comes from. So trying to design it where every player, even if you have a range of skills or abilities, can you make it so that each player can be appropriately challenged? And then repetition. So it's also along the lines of what you said. So the opportunity to execute the skill of the concept, and they're getting plenty of repetition. So if you make sure there's no super long lines or anything like that, and that the game itself lends itself to the specific situation coming out, because if you give a coaching point on something, say, okay, try that next time, and 20 minutes goes by and they haven't gotten a chance yet, then there's some issue. Then realistic. So, which can be a number of things, like is there decision making, and for me that's one of the biggest components. Like, is there decision making involved? Because that's one of the things our players struggle with the most. Are there directions, which doesn't necessarily have to be there all the time, but just an idea of what makes it realistic. Is there opposition? And that can be someone actually trying to steal the ball. That could be people in the way, even if they're not actually trying to steal it, they're just in the way to make traffic. Chaotic, again, and I put that kind of in quotations, that just, again, lots of stuff happening, going around. So even if it's not direct opposition, it's something that makes them have to make decisions and avoid traffic and that kind of thing. I just got a text from Jorge. It says, I don't know how delayed this is, but a drill that's not too confusing, so they don't spend most of the time trying to grasp it or asking questions. So good, perfect, right? So it's appropriately challenging. It's like John says, appropriately challenging, but it's simple. You don't have to make it overly complex. A lot of times, as I found as I continue coaching, sometimes my activities just become just different sized grids with different numbers of players in there. And that's pretty much it. And I just maybe change 2 goals or 1 goal or a big goal or a small goal. A lot of times that's the simplest way and sometimes most effective. Okay, so again, I kind of gave you the first one here. But what factors should we consider? So we talked about what makes it an effective activity, all those things. And so when we're considering what level of challenge or what kind of transition or those types of things. What other factors? So taking in, for instance, skill level. Anything else that you might think?
Right. So like age.
Yep.
I would think it would go along with your season plan, right, or what you've kind of outlined. And then maybe what the theme is for the session, right? So you're trying to incorporate that theme in each section of your session.
Perfect. Right. You got another one or no?
No, I
Okay,
can keep digging, buddy.
that's good. That's good. I mean, those two things are spot on, and really, that's kind of step one, right? What's your seasonal development plan? What are you trying to focus on? Now, that's today's session, whatever the theme is of that session. Now, let's break it down. Each of these activities is going to do that. So, some of the things I put down: cognitive ability, which just means their ability to understand things mentally. Their spacing and number of things happening at once. What's their age? Like you said, age or development level. That could be physical. That also kind of goes along with cognitive. It could be maturity, right? So Jorge, I know, like when I was watching you yesterday, you've got those 7-year-old, 8-year-old boys. They're crazy sometimes. So are your activities appropriate for them from a maturity, attention standpoint, that kind of thing. Maybe the design of the other activity. So based on if you've already kind of set 1 or 2 activities, a third one or a second one, what does that might look like in relationship to the other activities? Recent trends in our activities, and I kind of put boredom versus efficiency. So I'll give you a little quick story. Once when I was coaching a U9 girls team, they were a pretty good team. I was really trying to really overemphasize and get them to be technically sound and comfortable with the ball. So we did a lot of ball mastery stuff before most of our sessions. And I remember one time one of the girls goes, "Let me guess." She was like, before practice, she goes, "Let me guess. We're going to dribble in a square." and I was like, "Yeah, you're right. That's what we're going to do." I just kind of, at that point, I kind of started to realize, maybe I'm overdoing this, or I'm not being creative enough in making this a variation of this kind of thing. Obviously they need that, and the more they do it, the more we do it, the more efficient it is in that they know exactly what we're doing. They've done this before, so we don't waste time. But also, it keeps compounding on itself, and so their skill acquisition is more, starts to happen faster. But at the same time, as I learned that day, was I try not to make it boring. So can we create variation, or maybe we've just done that kind of a similar version of that activity 3 times the last session, 3 sessions. Let's change it up today. Just something that we always have to try and balance. Let me see. And the last one there, it's not appearing there for you. Let me see if I can get this to. I can't get that to show up. It just says type of interventions or coaching we want to employ. So, do you want to try and coach in the flow a lot? Do you want to have little intervals where you stop and then coach? Those types of things. Okay, I got a text from Jorge. He says, so spicing it up in a way so that they're still working on the same skill but different kind of activity. Yes, Jorge, that's exactly what I was talking about. So, because you're repeating the same skills, so they're getting that, but then doing a different type of activity. So, for instance, I'll use my example of dribbling in a square, which I'm sure you both know. You just have a grid and say, hey, just dribble around the area, don't crash into anyone, stay in bounds. Maybe you can do different types of dribbling. But instead of doing that, maybe another day you make it a circle, and half the players are in the middle of the circle, half the players are outside the circle. And okay, and you're in the middle of the circle, you're dribbling, and then you have to pick someone on the outside and switch with them. And then you dribble up to them, they do a takeover. Now they're in the middle dribbling around. and they find someone else on the outside, and you just keep switching. So it's basically the same thing, right? They're avoiding people, they're dribbling in an area, they're touching the ball a lot, but just by making the dynamic a little bit different, it keeps it a little bit, right, like you said, spices it up a little, makes it different. Or sometimes I'll add cones in the middle of the area. Okay, now you have to dribble up to a cone and do a move on the cone, or just avoid the cones. And again, it just adds a little different element to make it a little bit varying. Okay, so next thing, I want us to try and identify some strengths and maybe areas of improvement based on what we just talked about with the activities. So right now we have this activity. The topic is combining with a wall pass. This is the warm-up for about a U11 team. Basically, you got a circle, like I was just describing. Half the players are outside, half the players are inside. The players inside the grid pass to an open outside player. Then they go find another ball. They receive a pass it back. It eventually progresses to the inside player as a ball, and then dribbles around. Then he finds someone on the outside. There's a wall pass. So as a warm-up activity for like a U11 group, what do you think of this activity?
I mean, that sounds like it would be effective, right? You're getting them to move. They're starting with just a basic wall pass, so they aren't combining yet. They're just getting a lot of repetitions of making that wall pass, which is probably like the last piece of it once you go to like the more difficult section or piece of the session.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I think this is great. This is one of my favorite types of activities. We're talking about what we talked about before. Like you said, the guys they're getting moving, they're active, especially for a warm up. We want them to get their bodies going. It's basically a 1 ball to 2 player ratio. But the frequency of them touching the ball is a lot. That's for the players on the inside and the outside. They got a work to rest ratio right in the middle. They're working a bit for a while. You go for I don't know, a minute, 30 seconds or something, and then you switch them. And so they're getting to rest a little on the outside, but they're still kind of active rest. Yes, it's introducing the skill, like you said. A simple wall pass before getting into something too complicated. What might be some of the coaching points we do for this warm-up?
Accelerate after you play the ball, right? So to receive the other end of the wall pass. Maybe some type of communication, like pointing which direction you want the wall pass to go, or communicating the player's name, or making eye contact, something like that.
Okay. Good. I just got a text from Jorge. I think for U11 this would work. I think that the age they're more aware of the fields, just checking their shoulders, as well as their skill set is better to where balls aren't going everywhere. Good. Agreed. And the Jorge threw in there checking their shoulders, so that could be one of our coaching points depending on our group. Everything you said is correct, John. It could be, and depending on your group, it could be as simple as like breaking down the pass. Hey, lock your ankle, heel down, toe up, follow.
Right.
Make eye contact. That's a form of communication. I think for me is key. Are you making eye contact with the person you're going to pass to? So you call their name, but that doesn't mean they're paying attention.
Right.
If they're looking at you, that's how you know. Okay, good. So next one. Turning. The topic's turning. A U8 group, so the little ones, an orientation activity. So when we say orientation, meaning something to get them implemented into applying this skill in a game. So this group is a bit like what I was saying before. It's like a dribbling area. I call it dragons. Like it's like don't wake the dragon, because the little kids sometimes you got to be imaginative. So basically you dribble around, You dribble up toward the cone. Before you crash into it, you do a turn and you get away. You might progress to where if someone actually hits a cone, the coach enters or someone enters that's trying to kick their balls away. Now there's actually someone trying to kick their balls away. That would be a progression. So what are your thoughts on this as a U8 orientation turning activity?
Yeah, I think that's great because then you get an opportunity to teach them, a couple different ways to turn, so you could do inside, outside, kind of cutting through their legs and just get a sense of what they're comfortable with. And obviously with the cone not moving, there's no pressure. Mm-hmm. So they get that, maximum number of touches.
Okay. Good. And I'm kind of throwing a trick question at you with this. And I know maybe the word orientation you're not familiar with. That's the new U.S. soccer word terminology using. So okay. I like this activity for what we call an orientation activity, which is trying to introduce them using the skill in a game. This would therefore not really fit that. This is great for a warm-up. Like this would be a fantastic warm-up for this group. But generally when we talk about doing an orientation, it would be something where it's actually an actual game happening. So it could be a 1v1 or 2v2 game or 3v3 game, maybe to multiple goals where if someone's in your way, you have to turn and go another way. So anyway, that's kind of a trick question, and
okay.
But I figured this would happen, and everything you said is right. The touches they're getting on the ball is good. They have the opportunity to learn different kinds of touches, different kinds of turns, and the opposition is where there's something there they have to avoid, but it's not actually trying to take the ball from them. So everything you said is spot on. So this would be a great warm up, and then after that you'd go into more of an orientation activity that's just kind of game like.
Okay.
Jorge sent me a text saying how many cones would be involved. He says he knows with his group, the more cones and more things for them to do, the more confused they get. Basically, Jorge, if I do this, I would have at least one cone per player, and then they don't have to keep using the same cone. They can go to any cone they want. So they don't necessarily have to do a lot. I'd explain like this. Okay, you see the cones in the area? Yeah, okay. I want you to dribble around the area. Don't crash into any cones, and don't crash into anyone else. And then I'd say go, and let them do that. Just kind of dribble around the area. Don't hit anything. Okay? Okay, freeze after they kind of get oriented with that. Then I would say, all right, now, and I would demonstrate this as I do it. I would show them with the ball, and I would say, okay, now I want you to dribble up toward a cone, any cone you want. Dribble up toward it, and right before you get to it, can you turn and go the other way? And then pick another cone, dribble up toward it, turn, and go away. And I would show them as I'm doing that. That should be pretty straightforward. And I think and modeling it as you're explaining it goes a long way. So it doesn't have to be a lot of cones. I just do just one for everyone. That way you try to avoid someone having to wait for someone else at a cone or something like that. Okay, so receiving in the air. So receiving the ball in the air as a core activity, which a core activity means the main part of your session. This is the learning part of your session where you're trying to really get the topic going. For U9, so basically the idea is it's 2 versus 2 in an area. One team, there's 2 neutral targets. You score to either target if you hit a long ball in the air to them, and that person can control it in the end zone. It's a point. And then you can keep the ball if you score a point, and then you go the other way. Anyway, that's the basis of the game. So what are your thoughts?
So are they serving the ball to themselves in this game, or are you the coach on the side serving the ball?
So it's 2 versus 2, and it's a constant game. So there's no stopping. So the only time the ball stops is if they score or if it goes out of bounds, but then they quickly restart.
So I would think at that age, you wouldn't be able to work on that in that situation because they're not able to really command the, depending on skill level, right? But when would they be receiving the ball in the air in a 2v2 game?
Good. Okay, perfect. I'm glad you caught my little detail there. So generally speaking, I'd say for U9, right, U9 players can't strike a ball in the air consistently. So to work, to be receiving the ball in the air and try to work on that and expect that these players are hitting a ball in the air to someone and they're going to receive it in the area may not be the most appropriate or realistic expectation.
Right. So maybe, Zach, would an idea of like a variation would be to have, a group of 6. So you've got 2v2, and then the 2 players on the outside are doing they're practicing their throw-ins. And so whenever there's a dead ball, it's restarted with a throw-in, which would kind of get them to receive in the air somewhat.
Perfect. You're good. That's good. And actually, for the record, Jorge said the same thing. He just got the text saying U9. I'm not sure if they can hit that ball.
Right.
So good. I like that thought of a modification, right? Maybe you've got servers on the outside who are throwing it in. If you saw on the instructions here, it says any restarts are in the air. So that could be a throw-in or a service. So that's good. Or I've done it where you just toss the ball underhand if you want to get it higher. Or you can, if they're good enough, you can do a little volley out of their hands, something like that. So those are good modifications. If you've got players who are seeing this happen in the game a lot, right? The ball's in the air a lot, and you want them to learn how to receive it, but maybe they're not skilled enough to strike the ball consistently. Those are good modifications that you thought of. So for the record, for me, a U9 team, I probably wouldn't work on this topic. I would save this for depending on the level of the team and what they're seeing in the game. So again, think about the game, and if at their level of play, are they seeing it a lot? And so sometimes this might come in at U11, U12 a little bit, maybe U10 if they're a higher level group. But still, I've had it where I've had teams where they're a pretty good group of kids and they play at a high level where kids are hitting in the air a lot, but maybe my group of kids haven't grown yet, so maybe they're not strong enough to hit that ball regularly. So I have to make the modifications like you said, John, where someone's on the outside serving a ball with their hands or something like that. Okay, so you got a pen and paper near you?
I can.
I know I didn't necessarily tell you that in advance, but I figured it wouldn't be too hard to get.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
So let's do for your group. So Jorge, you can do for your U8 boys, and John for your, what is it? Your group U11, U12?
Yeah.
Okay.
U12.
So for your U12 girls, to think of for them, John, let's have you do a orientation. I'd just have you both do an orientation session or activity, not session, activity. So something that's game kind of involves a game, and that kind of introduces a topic. Let's do pick a topic of your choice, John.
Let me see. I just want to do something different than what I did today. Otherwise, I'm just kind of repeating the session. Let me see if I got this. So, a topic that I want to work on in the spring is switching play.
Okay.
So if I'm creating an orientation, so we're putting a game around switching play. So that's one I've struggled with trying to figure out. So like, it's not necessarily crossing, right? So I've done crossing activities where I'll isolate a player in the channel wide, and the ball has to be played into the channel and served back in. So there's some type of limitation, but I don't think that would really achieve switching play the way I want. But that's kind of the one activity I've used where it's maybe a full field game, or like a 4v4 with 2 channel players. So they have to play wide, ball comes back in. But what I'm trying to get them to work on is, a wide player is picking up their head to find the wide player, 30, 40 yards, because the kids are getting to the point that they have the ability to strike the ball, but they don't necessarily have the awareness to find that player. So that's kind of where I'm trying to work on.
Okay. Okay. So why did you choose to make it that big of? Why would you choose to make it that big of an area?
So that way they're getting used to, or they're getting an opportunity to strike the ball that distance. So one of my thoughts is kind of the introductory or the warm up is working on just ball striking, right? So toe down, ankle locked, and striking through the ball versus maybe an open inside of the foot pass, right? So I want to put them in a game where they could do that while they're playing. That's kind of my thought process.
Okay. And so how many numbers would be? Like, it'd be 3v3, 5v5, or what were we thinking?
I don't know. Because you can't. I don't feel like you're going to get enough repetition if you go, much bigger than like a 4v4, and I almost think that's too much. I haven't found a good, like, small-sided game that emphasizes switching the ball.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's a good thought there, right? You want to get them repetition, and especially in like an orientation, you're just trying to get them getting the repetition of the opportunity to do it. So how about you got a grid, and for your kids, if you're going to do like a 4v4, if you make it, and I think 4 is a good number, especially for your group, because now you can have width and you can have depth, and you can have some people making checking to the ball short and someone else being long, which is game realistic. And what if you just had a grid? It's 4 versus 4, and then you have 2 goals, like 2 small goals. One and they're wide, so a small goal on each on the end, but they're close to the touchline or sideline on each end. So now you score way over to the right or way over to the left. So now, as you're going to one goal, hey, it gets closed. Can you recognize, hey, it's not open anymore? Turn the way.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah. That way they're staying. The 2 players are kind of forced to stay wide if they want to score.
Right, and it could be, and that leaves them to the decision to say, okay, hey, I got the space, I can hit that long one like you're talking about, or I can't, but I can hit the short one, drop it back into someone, and they can then connect me across.
Right.
Or, hey, it's coming across, now the other team's gone over and read what we're doing and started to go close that goal. Boom, we knock it back where we just were bringing it from. Something along those lines. So it's kind of opening that up. So I think for me, for a topic like that, something as simple as that can work.
Yeah, I like it.
Again, and you don't have to you can make it a big area, or you want to hit the long ball, or you could make it smaller. And they're not going to have many long balls, but still the idea of recognizing that the space is closed, so I got to go the other side, is still there.
Yeah. And maybe having kind of a short field but a wide one.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Definitely. Um, okay, well, that's all I've got today.
So can I ask you one quick question?
Sure.
So I know we've talked about like the ideal way to create a session, right? And it's, warm up with, let's say it's the ball striking, right? The switching the field. So maybe I have them warm up with the ball striking, and then I build up, but it's all kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through and I was going through the U.S. curriculum or whatever, and they have their kind of ideal session breakdown, and I was looking at like the U12, so the basic stage. And so they have like their warm up, their physical, their technical, their tactical, and in a lot of the examples they're giving, it'd be like it didn't seem like they were all that tied together. Where like I'll look like perception and awareness then leads into passing and receiving, which then leads into possession, and that one might work well. But do you kind of do you base a lot of what you're doing off of that? Kind of how they recommend to use those sessions, or do you kind of like skip through like what is it, acyclic speed is one of the words I saw in there.
To be honest, I haven't looked at what U.S. Soccer currently has published as their curriculum. I know that's probably going through a remodel because the education department's going through a change of their personnel. So the structure of their sessions are changing, which I'm familiar with. I'm more familiar with the new stuff, which is where the word orientation comes from. I can't remember what the U.S. curriculum looks like exactly, so I can't say. I do know I've looked at it before, and to be honest, for me, it's hard for me to know. Like I draw influence from U.S. Soccer, from NSCAA, from other coaches I've learned from and everything, and I just kind of throw it together.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say. I have used it before, and I have that somewhere as part of my influence, and I've tried it. I've gone out and tried to do exactly what U.S. Soccer's told me after I did a license for a while, and kind of got a hang of it, and find that got an idea what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and I go from there. So I would say try it, and if it doesn't seem to be working, okay, tweak it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I was just curious because again, I was looking at it, and it's got a lot of good suggestions on kind of how to structure a session, but it feels like sometimes they contradict the stay focused on a particular topic, which I found kind of interesting because I totally agree. You get way more effective results by staying on the same topic, the same coaching point, and then repeating, rinse and repeat for 2 weeks, right?
Right.
And it just seemed like some of their sessions was like, let's do coordination and balance, then let's do turning and heading, and then let's do defending principles.
Right.
It's like, I don't see how that's going to work.
They're notorious for putting together things that are super high level and then not properly communicating or explaining to people, how it will be. Or how to implement that, or what's the context behind everything. So I get your confusion.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to ask because it was like they kind of contradict themselves in some points. So I was just wanted to get your feedback on that.
Sure. Jorge texts me saying if he wants to work on his young boys, spreading out and not bunching up and using the entire field, with that 2-goal game work? What do you think, John? Do you think that would work for that?
I'm trying to think of
trying to get younger kids to not bunch up and to spread out using that game that I described for your switching the field topic. Do you think that would work?
So if it's a real struggle right now, you might want to, I would think you would potentially want to add maybe some more limitations, like maybe you put a line down the middle of the field and certain players can't cross that line, from left to right, not cut the field in half the long ways, but like down the middle, right? So maybe a couple of players can't cross over that line, so they have to stay wide, potentially. So, because I would think if you're struggling with that, they would still just bunch up in one corner, even though you've made the field wide.
Okay, that's a good thought. I think that you could do the game without that middle line, and if they start to bunch up, you can start to sell them. Say, hey, you're just gonna say, hey, look, see how you guys are all in this one space. Look where look at that goal over there. Look, it's wide open. What can we do to maybe that goal now we could possibly score on it? And hopefully one of the kids will go, oh, I'll go run over there. Perfect. So you stay over there. You don't come over here, because if you come over here and you get the ball, there's nowhere for you to go. If you're patient and you wait over there, if we can find you the ball, you got a wide open goal. Just trying to. I think that to some extent we don't want to try and force them to do what we're looking for, but just help them see the picture.
Yeah.
Through our coaching. So if it's really a struggle and it's tough, you could do what you said. I think you might run into things where all the kids are lining up on the edge of that
Right.
middle line, so it still doesn't look as natural. But you can try and see, try how it works. So, to answer your question, I think yes, generally that could be a kind of game that works. And you could try it the way John said it. You could try it the way I said it at one point and see what works for you and your guys. I think a lot of that for your kids your age, getting them to spread out is tough and it's nearly impossible, which is why U.S. Soccer recommends that U8 play 4v4 with no goalkeeper, because the less kids, the better when it comes to them. They're just cognitively, it's hard for them to understand spreading out. For me, it helps to try and get them to think of it in a selfish way. If you're trying to chase the ball, if you get it, everyone's going to be in your way. If you stand over here and we wait for it and you get it, now look at all the space you have that you can play that's easier. I try to frame it that way to get them to think of it, how it's going to help them individually. But I think generally, though, the game that we described could definitely work for that kind of topic as well. All right. Anything else from you guys?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, appreciate you being on.
Great. Thanks, Zach.
All right. Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye.